Bettas. These are so pretty. Yes! Hi there, and welcome back to my channel. And for new viewers, welcome. This is Sirene, and I decided that this is going to be a Mermaid Summer Series. The Sirene really needs to have a good makeover, and well, I really am feeling mermaid, so let's get started. So, I'm still in the summer mood, and I really just want to customize this doll. I've been waiting on her for a while. So since she had no arms, I gave her a set of arms that I found that matched in my body box, removed her head, and that tail's broken. So off it comes. It was a beautiful tail. Anyway, now I'm taking my Dremel tool that I used. I took off the cutting part, put in a driver, and a drill bit, and I just drilled into her to put a hole for the coupler. Now, the problem with this is I ended up having to redo it later. Pay attention to anatomy. It actually is better if you put it towards the back near the spine. Once I had the hole big enough, I hot glued it in place and then used snakes of Apoxy Sculpt, once it was cool, to secure it. Also, you really should use gloves when mixing and using this stuff, but I keep forgetting to pick them up, and we've been broke. Okay, so once it was mixed, I smoothed it on as best as I could, just to make sure that I would be able to still attach the armature and smooth it down as much as I could on the doll. And then I decided to shorten her neck peg, which I actually forgot that I did. I actually thought it was still there. After that, it's off with her hair. It's matted and it just really needs to go anyway. Once it's all nice and short, take your pliers and pull out the hair, scrape and pull out the hair plugs. This does take a little while, so let's just take her to where it's all already done. Editing magic. So now it's time to take off her factory face paint, and I guess I zoomed in too close, or not close enough for my camera. So here she is with all her factory paint gone, and I used pure acetone. Then, using my special pliers and my ball and joint armature, I attached the armature to the doll body. And then I drew out and cut out a pattern and used some easy steam interfacing and cotton cloth, sewed it together, steamed it together, and ironed it together rather, and then sewed it to this wire. Now I'm using the wire to wrap it around the armature so that it stays. Unfortunately, it still swivels a little bit at this point. Don't worry, we fix that later. I trimmed off the end pieces, and now it's time to sew a little bit more wire. I took the excess wire that was folded down and just decided to secure the cloth a little bit more to that. It still swivels though, but it's so fishy. Now it's time for quilt batting. So I'm taking several strips of cloth of low pile quilt batting that I got at the craft store and went ahead and wrapped it around the doll and secured the ends with hot glue. Now, if I am supportive of all body shapes and sizes, after all, I'm a little bit on the larger side myself. God, I wish I had my mini me's figure, but well, not quite. But I say if you want to go bigger on the hips or anywhere else, go for it. I just kept wrapping it around until I was happy with the shape. And as you can see, it still swivels a little bit on that tail, but the cloth will fix that, I promise. There's the shape all done. I even wrapped a little bit at the end of the armature to make sure it didn't feel too bony. Then, taking my fishy mermaid pen, I drew out a pattern for the tail. I cut it out, marked it, so I know where the fold is. Then cut it out of two pieces out of performance fabric. And then using the same method, I created more cotton fins, side fins, and one dorsal fin. Now, originally I was gonna use this fabric, but the scales are too big. So let's just use the performance fabric. It's stretchy, it'll fit nicely, and frankly, I can airbrush it. Because then I can customize the scales to the size that I want. So this is very much a Kaypea Creations-esque doll this time, guys. Very much, it's slightly more art doll than Monster High, I think, at this point. Once I have the sides pinned and the ends pinned down in place so that they don't move, I go ahead and start sewing up the sides with a ladder stitch. And then I went back and realized that the top needed a little bit more securing and cinching in. I cut this fabric a little too big, but I love the result. Then you go ahead and repeat on the other side. When you get to the ends, go ahead and secure it as best as you can on one side. Now, I unpinned the back part of the performance fabric that was connecting to the fin and sew down the front. This way it makes a nice clean seam and it hides the wire. Now on to the other side. Gotta do that back too. So I pin that back down into place and start doing a modified ladder stitch to make a nice little neat seam so you don't see the stitches too much. And there it is. Oh my goodness. And, well, I freight checked the edges of my fin later, of my fluken fins later. Oops. I wasn't sure how well it would take with paint if it was already freight checked. After that, I went ahead and sewed on the side fins using a ladder stitch that creates a bit of a channel, so it makes it look like they're actually part of the doll body. That looks good. Let's do the same for the dorsal fin. Now there's no seam for me to hide here, so we're just going to sew that into place. Then it's time for epoxy sculpt. This is how I blend the top into the cloth. I got this idea from Dolllightful when she made her mermaid doll a few years ago. God, I love that doll. Now it's time for airbrushing, but this first day of airbrushing didn't go as well as I had thought. I mean, for some reason the water I think I thinned it down too much and my airbrush kept clogging with this coppery color. The next day, of course, went much better. I also airbrushed the edges of all the fins in white, pearly white. Gotta go for the sparkle, you know? Yeah, that's the ticket. That was a much better day of airbrushing. It was like a day or two later. I had to make sure my airbrush was really good and clean. Oh, it was just a little bit of a struggle this time. Then I airbrushed the top with pearly white on the epoxy sculpt with a tiny little bit of copper at the bottom to blend it. Then I used my crafting iron to permanently seal the paint into the fabric. Now, taking more of this Lumiere paint, I first experimented with red and then decided that this purple actually was a lot better for drawing on the scales. Using my small brushes, I took my time and carefully made my way down all sides of the tail. First in blue, and then I went back with half moons of gold. Then I used the same technique for the fins, using the blue first to outline all the veins, and then highlighting each vein with gold and white for wherever there's white. And sorry about the blurry over here. I did the same things for first mapping out the design for all the little triangles and veins, and then highlighted it with the same pearly white and gold. Then I went back and made more veins. I made them different lengths. Some went really high, others went really low, and then I highlighted all with gold and pearly white. And I even added some freckles in white and gold as well. Now for hair. I really was going to go with blonde, but you know what? It blends in too much with the head, so how about this Arctic blue? And you know what? I think I'm going to do something different for this reroot. We're not going to do a full reroot. We're going to do a mohawk. 80s style. At this point, I had just heard about Tina Turner's passing, and the more I rooted this, the more I felt the Mad Max from Thunderdome vibes from that film she was in as Auntie. So I just went with it, and since it was nice and poofy, I left it as it was. Then I glued it in place with Galaxy glue. On the surface where it was still bare, I hadn't hit it with Epoxy Sculpt or anything, so I decided to chew up some pink nylon hair into some, I don't want to say faux fur because that's not it, into some fluff, and I glued it on top of the plastic to the sides, or to the vinyl to the sides. Mohawk complete. Once it was all dry, I masked off the hairlines, made sure that the ears were visible so I could blush them. I took her outside and coated the body, top of the body, and her head in super clear. Then I blushed the body with coppers, pinks, and even blues. Well, this time around, I think it was just mostly coppers and pink. Then I did the same, and that's just when I decided I was going to blush with a little bit of blue. After all, there's still a little bit of blue visible at the top, and, well, I really like it. It blends in with the hair a little bit. So using pink pastels, I went ahead and blushed her lips, her chin, her nose, and along the tops of her cheeks. Then I gave her a little more contouring with more of that blue that I used on the ears. Now it's time to draw in the eyes, the details for the eyes. So drawing in a waterline, drawing in the top of where I want the eyeliner to be, and then I decided to put in the sclera first with a little bit of teal, and then I added a little bit of red. Then I started mapping out where the irises are going to go. This way, if I make a mistake, I at least have the ability to erase it a little bit better. Now I'm adding some blues to the fingers and the hands, palms of her hands, just to kind of bring this whole theme together. Originally I was trying to stay away from blues, but that Arctic blue, it looks kind of an aqua mint green, so I really loved the way it looked, and it kind of married everything together in just the right way. And I love how this skin looks. The more I blush it, the more I love it. A little bit more pinks. Those lips just are not showing up very well. Well, don't worry, we fix that later. I wanted to go for as natural a look as I could for her, but I still wanted her to have a little glam. Went with more blue over the ears and along her hairline. And of course, under her cheeks for contour. And blushed the chin again. Brightened up the sclera in the corner of the eye, and now it's time to start drawing in her irises. I went in with this really light purple, but I don't know, maybe it's too light. Seems to blend in a lot. Let's add some darker purples and a little bit of hot pink. Maybe that'll work. I also drew in the eyeliner, the beginning of the eyeliner, and the lines of her around her eyes. I also gave her a little bit of a white highlight at the bottom of her eye. Trying to give it, you know, that otherworldly but beautiful ethereal look. And then I blushed with a little bit of purple eyeshadow inside the irises. And kept going with watercolor pencils over that. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Now I'm starting to see it more. But it looks really pink. I wasn't really wanting pink. I was trying to go for purple. And then I drew in her pupils. And I'm not sure what happened here. These went a little wonky. I kept trying to fix it. And, well, I kind of see it. Kind of. I'm not sure. Let's give her some eyeshadow. Nice coppery to go with the tail. And then I took out my black watercolor pencil and started doing darkening up her eyeliner, and drew in the beginning of a lash at the corner, and then used eyeshadow to map out her eyebrows, and then drew it in with a teal watercolor pencil. Oh, I also used my kneaded eraser to refine the shape before going in with the pencil. There we go. Yeah, I see that. Really good. At this point, I decided to go with a slightly different color on the lips, and I like that a lot better. It looks natural, and yet it gives them just enough of color. And I used the teal watercolor pencil to add in a few details. I also added a little highlight to the top and darkened up her nostrils. Then I drew in the single eyelash hairs. I don't know what it is about face-ups. There's something just so soothing and fun about them. It's like you get to see a character come to life. I added in her eyelashes. Sorry for the jump in progress. I ended up doing that off camera because, well, some of the footage got a little blurry. This camera's really good though, honestly. It's sometimes the autofocus changes focal point. I added some highlights to her nose and the top of her forehead with a little white eyeshadow. The eyes are still too pink. Let's see if I can get some more purple in there. A little more blush to the lips. After another coat of Mr. Super Clear, of course. And then let's darken up that waterline a little bit and some of the lashes. Now, I was trying to do what I did with my last doll and do the Etalon version of eyelashes, but I don't know. I think this doll needs 3D lashes, don't you? And those eyes are just too pink. Don't get me wrong, pink is not a bad thing, but I really wanted something a little different for her eyes. Using white watercolor pencil, I also added highlights under her eyebrows and added some single highlighted hairs to her eyebrows. And at this point, the eyes are just not building up very much more. Time for gouache. Taking out my gouache paints, I added purples to the irises, and you know what? That looks more purple. That's the color I was going for. The good thing about gouache is if you make a mistake before you add sealant, you can just take a little bit of water on your brush and lift it right back off. Just be careful, it can run if it's too runny. Then using white, I added in her highlights and details, trying to keep it as delicate as I can. The darker purple, I outlined her iris. And then I brightened up the whites of her eyes. And also added a little bit more color to her waterline. I think I ended up using a soft peach. Sorry about the camera angle, guys. I kept forgetting to pull her up. I need to remember to put her towards the center of my mat when I work. Decided to put a little bit more purple around the edge of her iris. And then I tried to pull back the delicate nature of it because I made it a little too thick. There we go. Now those details helped. Then using the same techniques with my gouache paint, I added a little bit more color to the highlights in her eyebrows. Then I carefully painted in her pupils. And you know what? Her pupils came out a lot better with the gouache than it did with drawing them in. I may just have to use gouache from now on with this. Something about it, you know, helps me just get it better, but another sideways glance. Next doll must do a different glance to either the other side or straight. Although she really has this, you know, I could eat you, but I won't. Using some gray, I added some depth to the and shadows to the top of her eyes. But I used that off my watercolor pencil. You can lift the color right off if you dampen your brush a little bit. I did also just try drawing it in on this side, and it kind of worked a little bit better for that side. Don't know why. Added some eye shines, and that other pupil isn't quite big enough, so let's go a little bigger. And I apologize, I don't know why it was blurry this time. So I added some dragonfly glaze to the body to give it a bit of a color shift. And then I did the same thing with the head. This was after the final coats of Mr. Super Clear. I also added some gold to the ridges of her ears to make them pop. Then I decided to do the same thing with the cloth part of her body. There's just something so fishy about that it helps to bring out of it because it gives it that nice color shift. Now, after doing this, I did not boil wash her hair, by the way. I did add her eyelashes, 3D lashes, just little single clumps. So three sets of little single clumps that I bought at Sally's, and I used a different glue this time rather than my jewelry glue. But it took a little longer to dry, and I struggled a little bit with this one, so bear with me. After it was good and dry, I added some flat pearls I got from the scrapbooking section of my craft store. I used one big one and two small ones on each side of her cheeks. Do the same thing on the other side. Wow. I really love how she looks. I did use some cotton cloth and a little bit of that same paint that I used to glue on the eyebrows, which is my Craft Bond glue, to make her a teeny tiny little halter top. Then taking some UV resin and this mold, I created two seashells. They're so tiny. Let's give them some color. Painted gold, the same gold paint I used on the doll on top. I then coated it once that was dry in dragonfly glaze, and then with another drop of resin, joined them together under the UV lamp, added a pearl, and glued it to her top with hot glue. Oh my goodness. Armbands. She needs armbands. So using some thin jewelry wire, I gave her each an armband on her upper arms. They kind of fall down though. Maybe I should have used a different wire. That was a little stiffer. And of course using a pearl bead and a water droplet bead, I made her some earrings, and then I made her a staff using 2 beads and a chopstick and some jewelry wire. And here she is. Meet Nim. It means bright and radiant. I really love how she fits into our pod, and I hope that you enjoyed her creation. By the way, thank you all for all the support you have been giving me lately, and I really appreciate it. Every like, share, and bell really helps my channel to grow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.